What's your initial reaction to what the Chancellor's budget this year is going to mean for businesses?
Well, I think first of all, it was a very good performance on his feet. I think he did a great job of the performance. Unfortunately, some of the content wasn't great. For me, he should have employed far more of my recommendations of Caudwell pandemic recovery, which is attacking four main areas of the economy: infrastructure, massive investments into apprenticeship schemes, inward investment, and an energy efficient city. He didn't do any of that really, but he has done some smart stuff, and I really like his super deduction scheme of 130%, because I think that will really encourage businesses to invest in infrastructure and capital spend, and that's going to grow jobs, so that's a really good thing. Free ports, I think, will generate a lot more business, and so very positive. His restart grants for small businesses of 6k per location is going to be very, very positive in his green bank investment. So those are the good things. But he hasn't gone anywhere near far enough to gain the recovery that we really need. He's been too prudent, and we do have the lowest interest rates of all time. Debt is affordable. We keep talking about putting the public finances right, but Japan has run at over 200% debt to GDP for 20 years or more. Now, I'm not an advocate of huge debt because it exposes you if interest rates go up, but nor am I a fan of austerity or a failing economy. And we really do need to grow the economy, grow jobs, get those 3 million people back in work, grow GDP, and from that, tax revenues will grow. And when we grow the tax revenues, if interest rates go up, which of course they will one day, I don't know when, but I suspect years before there's any significant rise in interest rates, we can then pay the cost of debt servicing and the debt back, if we choose to, out of success rather than an austerity. Now,
why do you believe then that he's been too prudent, as you see it? Given that this is a Conservative government, they tend to want to keep taxes low, and yet we are seeing, for example, corporation tax due to rise to 25%, which has caused some people to throw their hands up in sort of despair.
Well, I think you just answered the question when I see it as too prudent, because, you know, the simple fact is that anything that damages investment, especially inward investment, is going to be a negative aspect for the UK. We need low corporation taxes and other incentives to cause businesses to relocate onto our shores, to grow manufacturing industry, to grow jobs, and to grow GDP growth. The rise in corporation tax, it still leaves us competitive with the rest of Europe, but we need to be ultra competitive and treat Britain as an aggressive business looking for the maximum prosperity over the years to come in order to pay down our debt out of success, rather than the future austerity that will come if we don't grow our economy.
It was not my intention at all to answer my own question. I do enough of that at home. Other commentators, though, have said that it will still leave the UK better placed than any of the other G7 economies. But, of course, we've also got the context of Brexit to bear in mind. How much of a shadow does that cast?
Well, I do believe it does cast a shadow. I think there's difficulties and settling in period to get over, but Brexit is the very thing that allows us to be very adventurous with our economic measures and to be competitive within Europe, more competitive than the Europeans are capable of being. So it gives us an ability to attract trade from their shores onto ours. But this is where I say the Chancellor is not being ambitious enough. He's been too prudent and not ambitious enough. I would never want to expose Britain to fiscal problems, but I really do not see interest rates going up significantly at all for many, many, many years. And if the money that we borrow is invested extremely wisely It's invested in the future. It's invested in job creation, which cuts the government's costs. It's invested in GDP growth, which provides them with more revenue. When you calculate the cost of 3 million people out of work, the total cost is probably in the region of between 100 to 200 billion pounds per year. Getting those 3 million, if it turns out to be 3 million, I am making that assumption because that's my forecast, 3 million. But whatever the number, getting those 3 million back to work saves a huge amount of cost to the UK economy and would easily pay for any debt servicing costs that we need. So this is a time to be more ambitious than Rishi has been. I understand why he's taken the road that he has, but in my view, he should have really promoted the UK economy above all else to try and grow that GDP, grow jobs, grow tax revenues as a consequence of success, not as a consequence of making people worse off, and make Britain the absolute leading light of Europe.
We will see eventually the end, of course, of the VAT reductions. The furlough scheme will be phased out. But politically, surely he had to be seen to be behaving in this way, if not economically, which is more of your argument, but politically needs to be seen to be trying to claw back this incredible amount of public spending that he's felt compelled to do during the pandemic. This money was never going to be free. It always had to be paid back.
Well, that's where he could have put a reverse argument if he wished, and most people would buy into that reverse argument, because who says it has to be paid back? The only issue with big debt is the potential if the debt causes inflation because you're putting it into spending instead of into investment, and if interest rates rise. Many economies over the future years are going to be living with debt of 100% plus to GDP. Ours is going to approach 100%. Who says we need to pay it back? The only issue is if interest rates rise, the cost of servicing that debt becomes a big drag on the economy. So what we need to do is borrow big and invest wisely and big to grow businesses in the UK, to grow the economy, and we can then, if we choose to, pay down the debt out of that growth. But even if we don't pay down the debt, we will have more than enough income in the government exchequer to pay the increased servicing costs. So, I don't disagree with a lot of the budget. I just think he's not been ambitious enough. I think there's a lot of smart moves in there, but he could have done a lot more. And I think one of my major criticisms would be his loan recovery scheme of 25,000 to 10 million, because he's once again said that he will guarantee 80% of that. Now, that will not work. It absolutely will not work, because those businesses that have been traumatized and need these loans will not be able to put the other 20% equity in to guarantee the loan. And I had this argument with Rishi 9 months ago on the previous set of loans, and he eventually changed his mind and put 100% guarantee in. Why he thinks he can revert 9 months later back to another 80% and requiring the business to put 20% in, I really do not know.
It might not be over yet. You never know. He might. There are always concessions, aren't there? John Caudwell, founder of Phones for You. It's good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us today.